Hi, welcome to Convergence Quick Bytes, where we take complex business technology and security topics and break them down into bite with a Y sized conversations with partners and folks in our community that can help business leaders as well as owners understand how to make better decisions for their organizations to help them grow and scale their companies in the future. We will be talking about various different topics that are related to technology and security, and that's the whole goal of this series today is to talk about point of sale systems and PCI compliance. We have about a dozen or so videos that we're going to do on this topic. There's a lot to unpack, and our guest today is Keith Sconiers. Keith is the president and founder of PaySuite, one of our very trusted partners that specializes in point of sale and payment card solutions for small and mid-sized businesses. Keith, you want to take a minute and introduce yourself to the listeners and the folks watching?
Yeah, absolutely. Keith Sconiers, a major fan of Convergence Networks, a longtime partner here based in the Northwest in Portland, actually. Founded PaySuite back in 2017 after working for one of the largest payment providers in the country. And our mission has always been to help business owners determine which solution's right for them, help them get the best price, get the best technology, and get the best support so that their staff doesn't have to manage the headache of dealing with payment solutions.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah.
And we greatly appreciate your expertise and wisdom that you share with our customers and with our team members to help them also better provide guidance and recommendations along the way. Well, today's our first topic and first focus, and the agenda is to actually help business owners and leaders understand what the payment providers are. There's kind of three, right?
hmm
Direct, ISO, and then facilitators.
hmm
What's the difference between an ISO and a payment facilitator?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And if you were to ask me that question 5 years ago, it
Yeah,
would be a much clearer answer in terms of what is a
a
direct processor, an
lot
ISO,
changes.
and a payment facilitator. Yeah, because convergence, if we're going to use that word, has been
Sure,
happening in our industry quite a bit.
sure.
Traditionally, though, a direct payment processor has been a provider that deposits money. They have a direct relationship with Visa and MasterCard, American Express, and Discover, and they manage all the routing, all the management of fees as it relates to what merchants pay, how Visa gets paid, and then how the card issuing bank actually gets paid. So they
Hmm.
manage all those relationships. And ISO, it has traditionally been just a sales arm for the direct payment processor. So they contract with the direct payment processor and they're boots on the ground that are out acquiring accounts on behalf of the direct processor in exchange for what many consider to be just a revenue share or revenue split. Very similar as you look at like the VAR channel, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
And so a payment facilitator, these are companies like Square, PayPal, Stripe. They are, I would say, newer entrants into the market, not new by today's standards, because it's probably been about 10, 15 years when these names really started to gain traction. But what they have been in the past has been really technology platforms that sit on top of a direct payment processor, having a relationship with a direct payment processor while providing, I guess you would say, easier tools for merchants, large and small, to engage with that has been very different from the traditional direct processor. So Square made their name by creating the little square that you could plug into your
yeah.
phone at a farmer's market, and you could be up and processing payments in a very short period of time. We're talking hours, and that was cutting
Hmm.
edge. And that's what a payment facilitator really is a technology platform that is leveraging technology to enable merchants all around the country or around the world attach to payments very quickly, get up and running very quickly with technology that's really self-service has really been what has made them, I would say, exciting,
Hmm.
and has allowed them to grow very quickly.
Yeah, it's hard to find a small cafe or local retailer shop that likely isn't using Square. I mean, I remember the
Mhm,
early days when Jack Dorsey, came alive with Square,
mhm,
and it was the coolest thing, and this little, white
mhm.
thing that pops into your phone. And in a previous life, that was incredibly fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Well, it's another Jack making something cool, so I was excited about that.
I love that.
Hey, more Jacks, right?
Right.
But yeah, no, it was really interesting to watch that transition, because I remember really the only name that a lot of people knew at that time was PayPal, right? And this
Mhm.
was a
Yeah.
whole new way of connecting this little
Mhm,
device to your
mhm.
phone,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden PayPal has their own, and then Stripe, and then all these other, types of organizations kind of come out of the woodwork because they
Mhm.
see an organization disrupting their their potential revenue streams.
Yeah. Mhm.
But I guess I want to pivot a little bit. So, how do direct processors handle the transaction fees?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a great question. So
because that's a
when
one-to-one, right? I mean, you're really connecting directly with, and you're cutting out an independent sales organization out of the middle.
Not really, because when you take a step back and look at how the fees are calculated, you recognize
Mhm,
very quickly that 80 to 90% of the fees are actually created. They're called interchange.
mhm,
Interchange fees are fees that are determined when the bank and Visa come together to issue a card to us, their
mhm,
customer that's, setting up their bank account at their bank, right? That
mhm.
interchange fee is paid regardless of what payment processor is involved, right? So
Yeah,
so that's 90%, 80 to 90% of your actual overall cost to process a credit or a debit card. So the way that processors handle fees is obviously when me as a customer, I go swipe my card at a business, that has an interchange fee tied to it.
mm,
That's going to get passed to the business. And then the direct
okay.
processor charges their fee, which could be in most cases, it's about a 0.5% on average across the industry. They're going to get
Mhm,
paid that. And then
mhm,
Visa, if it's a Visa card or a MasterCard or a Discover or an American Express, they have what is called network fees or assessment fees. And those can
mhm,
range from anywhere from 10 to 20 basis points when you factor in all the costs associated with it. So they're going to
mhm,
get paid that fee as well, regardless of who is involved in the transaction because they issued the card. And so what the payment processor does is they move the money from the card issuing bank to the business
mhm,
owner's bank, and they
mhm.
move that money. And in the process of that, they take all those fees, which are the interchange fees, the processor markup, and the dues and assessments that go to the card brands.
Mhm,
They calculate all those fees, then they either take it out of the transaction before the deposit reaches the business owner, or they wait until the end of the month and pull it out of their bank account with all those
oh,
transaction fees combined. And then
mhm,
obviously as a result of that as well, if an ISO is part of that relationship, then that independent sales organization is going to receive their profit from the processor markup
mm,
that they've
interesting.
determined, right? And so that's how processors handle the payment processing fees, and they vary depending on whether it's a payment facilitator or if it's a direct processor. And an ISO
Mhm.
really doesn't control that. It's the direct processor's platform that they're using to set up and manage merchants anyway. So,
And for those who don't understand, a basis point, that's the third digit and
hmm
after, when you
yeah,
do dollars and cents. So $1.10. Well, there's a bunch of other very, very small numbers after that that are your basis points
yeah,
that you don't even realize. Sometimes I
yeah,
think it's kind of funny because you go to buy a gallon of gas or something, right? And it's
yeah,
$1.25 or $7.25 and 9 tenths. And that's a
yeah.
basis point,
Uh-huh.
right? Nobody really
Fractions.
understands that.
Yeah,
But it's fractions of cents at that
yeah.
point, and it could be
hmm
thousands of fractions of
hmm
cents.
hmm
But when you're talking about billions of transactions on a daily basis, it starts to add
hmm
up really fast.
Yep.
So, what's the advantage of working with a direct processor?
Well, the advantage of working with a direct processor is you know who to choke. Right? And the disadvantage is you know that you might have to.
Yeah,
but
well, that's
but
true.
yeah, I think that
That
there's
happens
advantages.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, The advantage is that when you're working with a direct processor, who to go to when you need help, right?
Hmm.
Who's responsible for authorizing transactions, settling
Hmm.
them, and depositing money, and the entire service, right, of your account. Who's responsible
Hmm.
for the service in your account? And so that's a
Hmm.
major advantage. The disadvantage in some cases can be, and it really depends on who your account manager is, your
Hmm.
advocate, whether you have an internal advocate or not, is that these
Yeah.
companies have, one of the top payment processors that we do have a relationship with, they have millions and millions of customers, right? And they don't have millions of employees to make sure those customers are happy. And so what happens typically is that customers can get lost sometimes
Hmm.
when it comes to getting support for their account. And we run across
Yeah.
that all the time. And so the
Yeah.
advantage is that, hey, you have someone who is responsible for the entirety of your account, making sure you get
Hmm.
great service. But the disadvantage could be, depending on who you're working with, is that you might not have any advocacy or help.
Which is to the disadvantages, kind of leads into the history of PaySuite,
Yeah.
right? And why you took that leap.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about why those disadvantages make an opening for an organization like PaySuite to come in and be more helpful.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I guess I'll take a step back really quick and just share why PaySuite
Hmm.
even came to fruition. I
Sure.
left the industry in 2016 to go to nonprofit because that's really where my heart was at the time, was to serve and help people um,
Mhm.
within a the nonprofit education space. And so I went and I did
Yeah.
that, and I kept getting phone calls from people who still needed help with payments. And
Hmm.
so I worked there, but ultimately decided that I would open my own practice at PaySuite. And I could have gone and worked for any of the payment processors in the country that I wanted to, because I left
Yeah.
a major provider that when you work there, like, you can pretty much go there and go work wherever you wanted. But I didn't want to sit on this. I wanted to sit on the same side of the table as the business owner. I
Yeah.
didn't want to go work for another provider and sell business owners on why we were the best, right? I wanted to
Yeah.
help them find the best solution for their business, because what I found in working for the one of the largest processors in the country was that there's this attitude at these direct processors that they're the best, and whoever's not processing with them is processing with the wrong or the worst partner in the world.
Sure.
Right. But what I found
Sure.
was that there's a lot of really good companies in this space that provide great technology, from independent sales organizations that layer their technology on top of direct processors, to what
Hmm.
direct processors are doing right now to compete with the payment facilitators like Square, PayPal, and Stripe. What they're doing
Hmm.
to stay relevant
Yeah.
makes a tremendous opportunity, obviously, because they're all competing for the same merchant's business in many cases. But for the
Hmm.
merchant, they're in a position now where they need help to find out, like, which solution's right for them, because there's a
Hmm.
plethora of options out there today.
Oh
There's
yeah.
not a lot of places where you can go and get unbiased advice on, hey, what should I be using for my situation, for what's important to me, for my size, for my
Mm.
needs as it relates to customer service, for my situation of the payment methods that I really need to have in my business. And so that's why I started PaySuite, was to
Yeah.
provide business owners with that option to say, hey, whether you're using us as a payment provider or as a payment advisor, we
Mhm.
can help you determine what your next step is and just provide you with
Yeah.
the support that you need without feeling like every conversation is about ripping and replacing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which happens a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. Well, that's gonna make the first bite of this series for point of sale and PCI compliance. We have Keith here. If you have questions about point of sale and card processing and would like to talk with their team for advice and or guidance on what to do for your own credit card needs, feel free to reach out to Keith at gopaysweet.com. And if you have questions about payment card compliance and what you need to be doing around that, reach out to Convergence Networks. You can connect with us at Go Further at convergencenetworks.com. Thanks again, Keith, and I look forward to catching you on the next video where we'll be talking more about decoding fee structures. It sounds fascinating, but it really
Oh
is
yeah.
actually cool. I say that snarky, but yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. Talk
Take
with you
care.
soon.